In this episode, we turn to a topic that helps explain why so many successful attacks begin with something that looks ordinary on the surface. Social engineering and obfuscation detection are both about recognizing concealment, but they conceal different things in different ways. Social engineering hides malicious intent inside human interaction by using trust, urgency, authority, curiosity, or fear to push someone toward a bad decision. Obfuscation hides malicious intent inside technical artifacts such as messages, files, links, scripts, or commands so that the dangerous part is harder to notice at first glance. When you study these two ideas together, a bigger lesson starts to appear. Attackers often succeed not because people are foolish or systems are weak in one obvious way, but because harmful activity is disguised so well that it feels routine right up until the moment the damage begins. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. At its core, social engineering is manipulation aimed at getting a person to reveal information, grant access, send money, open a file, click a link, or take some other action that benefits the attacker. The important beginner idea is that the attacker is not always trying to beat a firewall or exploit a technical weakness first. Sometimes the easier path is to influence a human being into opening the door voluntarily, even if that person never intended to do anything unsafe. This works because people are busy, distracted, trusting, and often measured by how quickly they respond to requests rather than how carefully they inspect every detail. In an enterprise setting, that means the attacker may impersonate a manager, a vendor, a recruiter, a customer, or a member of the help desk in order to create a believable story. The target is not only the user's inbox or phone. The real target is judgment under pressure, because once judgment is disrupted, ordinary security rules can be bypassed through a perfectly ordinary-looking interaction. What makes social engineering especially effective is that it often uses normal human instincts rather than unusual technical tricks. Most people want to be helpful, avoid conflict, respond quickly to leadership, and keep business moving without causing delays. Attackers understand that and design messages or conversations that exploit those instincts in a way that feels familiar rather than suspicious. A request framed as urgent can make someone act before thinking. A request framed as confidential can make someone avoid asking questions. A request framed as helpful can make someone lower their guard because the interaction seems cooperative rather than threatening. This is why social engineering cannot be understood only as a problem of careless users. It is really a problem of human psychology being manipulated under realistic business conditions, and security analysts need to recognize that the strongest deception often feels plausible precisely because it mirrors the pace, tone, and pressures of normal work. Social engineering can take many forms, and that variety matters because beginners sometimes imagine only one type of phishing email and miss the wider pattern. The attacker may use email, text messages, phone calls, messaging platforms, social media, fake websites, or even in-person interaction to create trust and obtain a response. Sometimes the message is broad and generic, sent to many people at once in the hope that a few will react. Sometimes it is carefully tailored to a specific department, project, or person so that the request feels unusually credible. A financial employee may receive what looks like a routine invoice update, while a new hire may receive a fake onboarding request, and a manager may receive a message that appears connected to a real vendor relationship. The delivery method changes, but the underlying tactic stays the same. The attacker studies context, creates a believable pretext, and then positions the target to make a choice that seems minor in the moment, but opens the way to something much more serious. Detecting social engineering starts with recognizing patterns that do not fit the normal shape of a legitimate business request. One of the most common signs is emotional pressure, especially urgency, fear, secrecy, or flattery that pushes the recipient to act before verifying details. Another sign is contextual mismatch, where the request sounds possible but does not fit the normal workflow, role, or communication style of the sender it claims to represent. A message may ask for credentials in a way the real department never would, or it may request financial action at an odd hour through a channel the organization does not normally use for that purpose. Small inconsistencies often matter, such as an unusual tone, a sudden change in writing style, a reply path that does not match the supposed sender, or a request that skips the approval steps everyone usually follows. None of these clues alone guarantees an attack, but together they help the analyst or employee notice that the request is trying to create momentum before understanding has a chance to catch up. The enterprise environment adds another layer because social engineering becomes more believable when it attaches itself to real business processes. Attackers may reference invoices, executive approvals, password resets, shipping updates, document reviews, legal notices, vendor renewals, travel changes, or payroll matters because those subjects already exist inside the daily rhythm of the organization. When a request sounds close enough to routine, the target may focus on finishing the task rather than questioning the source. This is why good detection depends not only on spotting strange wording, but also on understanding normal operations. If an executive never asks for gift card purchases, or the payroll team never requests tax data through ordinary email, then a message using those themes becomes much easier to challenge. Analysts who understand business process can detect deception more effectively because they are not only looking for technical oddities. They are also looking for requests that violate the organization's usual patterns of approval, communication, and trust. Obfuscation is different from social engineering, but it rests on a similar principle of concealment. Instead of manipulating a person directly through story and emotion, obfuscation hides the real meaning or function of something technical so that defenders, users, or security controls have a harder time recognizing what is happening. A malicious link may be disguised so the destination is not obvious. A harmful file may be named to resemble a routine document. A command or script may be altered, broken apart, encoded, or rearranged so that its purpose is less visible to someone reviewing it quickly. This matters because attackers do not want their tools, payloads, or instructions to look plain and direct. The more clearly something announces its intent, the easier it is to stop. Obfuscation, therefore, increases the chance that harmful content will be opened, executed, ignored, or allowed to pass through a security layer that might have blocked it if the underlying behavior had been easy to see. A useful beginner distinction is that obfuscation is not the same thing as legitimate protection. Encryption protects data so authorized parties can keep it confidential, but obfuscation is often used to make intent harder to interpret, especially during inspection or review. In a malicious context, that means the attacker may hide what a link truly points to, what a file really does, or what a command is actually trying to accomplish. This can include unusual formatting, added characters, misleading names, compressed content, encoded segments, or multiple layers of wrapping that force an analyst to peel things back before meaning becomes clear. The reason attackers do this is simple. If a harmful object looks harmless, more people will trust it, and more systems may fail to detect it immediately. For defenders, that means obfuscation detection is partly about learning to distrust appearances. A clean-looking document name, a familiar-looking website, or a strangely formatted instruction may all deserve more scrutiny when the surrounding context suggests concealment rather than normal business activity. One place obfuscation appears often is in links and web destinations, because attackers know that many users make quick decisions based on visual familiarity instead of careful inspection. A link may look like it belongs to a known brand or service while actually leading somewhere slightly altered, redirected, or hidden behind additional layers. The domain may resemble a legitimate one closely enough to fool someone who is moving too fast, or the visible text may suggest one destination while the underlying destination points somewhere else. Obfuscation also appears in attachments and files, where the name, icon, or format may be chosen to reduce suspicion. A file can be made to look like a routine document even if opening it starts a very different chain of events. For analysts, the lesson is that appearance and reality are often deliberately separated in malicious content. That separation is not random. It is a designed attempt to exploit quick trust, incomplete inspection, and the human tendency to recognize familiar shapes before asking deeper questions about what sits underneath them. Obfuscation also shows up in scripts, commands, and process behavior, which is why analysts must pay attention to technical actions that seem unusually complex, fragmented, or hidden for no clear business reason. A malicious instruction may be split into pieces, encoded into a less readable form, or rearranged so that the harmful function is harder to recognize during review. Sometimes the obfuscation exists to bypass simple detections that rely on obvious words or patterns. Sometimes it exists to slow down the human analyst who is trying to understand what happened on a system. Not all complex code or compact commands are malicious, because administrators and developers sometimes use advanced techniques for legitimate reasons. The important question is whether the complexity matches a real operational need. When a routine business process suddenly depends on hidden execution, unusual launching behavior, or heavily disguised instructions, that mismatch becomes a strong clue that the attacker is not merely using the system. The attacker is trying to conceal how the system is being used. One of the most important ideas in this topic is that social engineering and obfuscation often work together rather than separately. A convincing message gets the target to trust the interaction, and obfuscation helps hide the dangerous payload, destination, or instruction inside that trusted interaction. An employee might receive a believable note about a shared document, while the underlying link is disguised. A finance worker might receive what seems like a vendor update, while the attachment hides its real function behind a harmless-looking name and format. A user may be pressured into approving an action quickly, while the technical artifact connected to that action is built to avoid simple recognition by both people and machines. For a beginner, this combined view is extremely important. Many successful attacks are not purely human attacks or purely technical attacks. They are blended attacks, where the story convinces the person and the obfuscation delays discovery long enough for the next stage of the compromise to begin. Because these attacks are blended, detection is stronger when human and technical signals are considered together. A suspicious message becomes more concerning if it arrived just before an unusual login event, a strange process launch, or a connection to a rare destination. An odd attachment becomes far more meaningful if the user who opened it was targeted with a request that created urgency or secrecy. Likewise, a disguised command found on a host becomes easier to interpret if the investigation also shows that the user was recently contacted through a believable pretext tied to their job. This is why analysts should resist the urge to look at indicators in isolation. The most revealing pattern is often the relationship between the social part of the attack and the technical part that followed it. When you connect those two sides, the event stops looking like a random mistake or a strange artifact and starts to look like a deliberate chain of deception designed to gain trust, hide purpose, and create time for the attacker. There are also several misconceptions that can interfere with good detection if they are left unchallenged. One misconception is that only inexperienced or careless people fall for social engineering, when in reality well-crafted pretexts can pressure highly capable employees who are busy, distracted, or operating under realistic business demands. Another misconception is that malicious messages always contain obvious grammar errors or bizarre wording. Many do not. Some are polished, timely, and highly relevant to the target's role. On the obfuscation side, beginners sometimes assume that anything hidden must be highly advanced or impossible to understand. Often it is simpler than it looks and is designed mainly to slow recognition rather than achieve technical brilliance. Another mistake is assuming that detection belongs only to the technical team. In truth, users, managers, analysts, and business owners all contribute, because deception is most effective when one group assumes another group is responsible for noticing the warning signs first. A mature detection mindset starts with controlled skepticism rather than fear. The goal is not to distrust every message, every file, or every unusual action so completely that work stops. The goal is to pause when something feels slightly misaligned and ask whether the sender, request, timing, channel, and technical details truly belong together. Analysts benefit from understanding both business process and technical behavior because social engineering often breaks one while obfuscation hides the other. When a request pressures someone to bypass normal approval and the attached content is harder to interpret than it should be, the pattern becomes stronger. When a message seems normal but leads to host changes, odd outbound communication, or disguised execution behavior, the pattern becomes stronger again. Good detection grows from this habit of looking for mismatches. The attacker depends on the target accepting the surface story quickly. The defender gains an advantage by slowing down just enough to compare appearance with intent. By the end of this discussion, the main takeaway should feel clear and practical. Social engineering detection is about noticing when a human interaction is designed to manipulate trust, emotion, or routine so that someone makes a risky choice. Obfuscation detection is about noticing when technical content is deliberately disguised so that its purpose is harder to understand or inspect. These ideas matter together because modern attacks often rely on both, using believable stories to gain cooperation and hidden technical detail to delay recognition of what is actually happening. For a CySA Plus learner, that means good detection requires more than spotting malware or reading logs. It requires understanding how deception moves across people, messages, files, links, commands, and business context all at once. When you learn to recognize pressure, inconsistency, concealment, and mismatch, you become far better at identifying the kinds of attacks that succeed not by being loud, but by looking ordinary just long enough to get what they want.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.